Hey everybody, I'm Janawicz, member of Kegel's lane maintenance team and USBC Hall of Famer. Being involved with lane maintenance with Kegel for the last 22 years and being a competitive bowler for most all of my life, one of the most commonly asked questions that comes to me on social media, via email, and sometimes right in person at the tournament site is, how do I play this pattern? This leads into a really complex answer, which takes into consideration the lane surface and its age, topography, the type and condition of the lane machine that's being used to oil the lanes with, the player's skill set, and the equipment he's using. Well, this is the next installment of an educational series of videos where we try lining up on different patterns and see if the pattern plays the way we think it should. We'll also show you why certain parts of the lane will play better than others, show why certain ball selections will work better than others, and since we have the unique setup of having the two most common lane surfaces today used in Brunswick Pro Lane and AMF SPL, you'll be able to see the differences of each surface's characteristics while featuring our different chemicals and lane machines. Today, we're going to be talking about the effect of drop brush. Now obviously ball motion with a set pattern will vary from center to center, but when patterns are created, they're created based on the lane surface that they will be bowled on. We're now back at the lab on the near flat lane surfaces at 2051 Longleaf Boulevard to test more patterns. Speaking about Area 2051, Kegel created this multi-purpose test center to be able to test new lane conditioners, to potentially do overflow batch testing for these conditioners, and to test patterns and new lane machines in a private and secluded environment away from the world-renowned Kegel Training Center. It also provides us in tech support, an area to try and help troubleshoot problems customers may have with their current and legacy machines, and a place to educate customers on lane machines and pattern theory. This is the ideal environment to see how true a pattern will play. So if it plays different than what you see at your center, you can chalk that up to differences in the lane machine, surface, and lane conditioner. Each month, we'll be using a different lane machine and/or chemicals, so that way you, the viewer, can see the difference in how the ball slows down. This month, we'll be using the Flex lane machine, along with Ice lane conditioner and our Defense C mixed at 5-1. Ice is one of our most used tournament conditioners and my personal favorite in the Kegel line. I like it most because I feel it's our most durable conditioner, and lane condition stability makes for happier bowlers and lane men alike. And after 2020, we can all use a little more stability in our lives. This month's pattern is the High Street version 2, which is part of the Kegel Recreation series. The pattern is 44 feet with a drop brush distance at 35 feet, and the volume is an average volume of 25 milliliters. Now when you look at the load structure, it's a basic house pattern with loads spread out from 9 to 12 after the two loads of 2 to 2. On the reverse pass starting at 35 feet, there's an additional oil being applied from boards 14 to 11. Being a 13-to-1 house pattern ratio, we should have multiple angles and they should be pretty soft, even for me. Now we know that when the buffer brush lifts at 44 feet on this pattern going forward, not all the oil is out of the brush. So when it lowers or drops on the reverse pass, it will add more oil to that part of the pattern. And with the drop brush being at 35 feet, that means that the last 9 feet of the oil pattern will only have the oil that was applied going forward. Today's test is going to see what happens to ball motion and which zones play easier when we drop it directly at the oil pattern at 44 feet and compare it to dropping it at 35 feet, like in the original version. Now, if you don't know exactly what all these numbers mean and want to learn more about the specifics of reading patterns, click on the link for the webinar that Gus Fologine and Doug Dukes did on our YouTube page. For most tournaments in league, 10 minutes of practice is standard. You can get off about 30 total shots if you're ready to go and assuming no pin setter issues. Since we'll be testing 3 different zones on the same lane with 2 different drop brush patterns, that'll be about 10 shots in each zone total, which is basically 5 shots in each zone on each pattern. Being a 13-to-1 house pattern, hitting the pocket shouldn't be overly difficult, and I should have some area in all 3 zones. The big thing I'll be watching for is the amount of mistake area and pin carry with these 2 drop brush changes in High Street, as well as how much the ball slows down off the end of the pattern between the drop brush changes. Speaking about the drop brush changes, you might ask, well, how much oil does dropping the brush really add? To find out, I went ahead and pulled tapes in 7 different spots throughout the pattern, and 2 of those tapes were within the 2-foot range the drop brush window is at 37 and 42 feet. just so that way we could get a good 3D picture of how the pattern looks from the foul line to the end of the oil pattern. You can see how the pattern looks with the 35-foot drop brush, with the oil tapering off at the end. Now with the 44-foot drop brush, notice how much more the back part of the lane looks now, while the rest of the lane still remains the same. When looking at all the actual unit values, we doubled the amount of oil in the last 9 feet of the pattern. So keep this in mind when watching the difference in watching the ball motion videos and the specto data. For zone 1, I'll use a Roto-Grip Hustle PBR, which is a lower flaring, solid symmetrical with a fairly slow response cover, and my 65 by 5 by 35 layout, going straighter around the second arrow to see if that's smooth enough to be close enough to the dry without overhooking, but also having enough traction for when we get the ball in the oil. Now for zone 2, I'll be attempting to throw a Storm Axiom Pearl, which is a stronger cover, bigger flaring symmetrical, also with that same 65 by 5 by 35 layout. Hey, when in doubt, put the big dot over the ring finger, right? Now, this ball also has pretty good traction in the oil, but hopefully won't hit the dry too strong. Now, I'll be throwing this ball around the third arrow, trying to get it out to about 8, 9, 10 down the lane. And for zone 3, I will use the Big Bowling Company's Idea with the JJ Special 65 by 5 by 35 layout, going around the fourth arrow to about 10, 11, 12 down the lane. This is a strong Pearl asymmetric, and I'll be using this to play a little bit more inside to see if I have decent motion and margin of error using this quicker responding asim crossing more boards. We've got a smoother, solid ball going straighter, a symmetrical Pearl using a little bit more angle, and an asymmetrical Pearl using the most angle. Let's see how much difference the difference in drop brush affects ball motion and which one gives us the best look. Now going straighter with the Hustle PBR around 10 to 12, I had a really nice look. All I was trying to do is keep the angles a little more shut down through the front while staying a little bit closer to the friction. As you go through the shots, you'll see shot 2 was on line, shot 3 was wider, and the specto data shows that. And shot 4, I got it in a little bit on the tight side. But if you notice, all of the first 4 shots, they all go dead flush. To me, that's ideally what you're looking for in ball motion. Hold, swing, and carry. Now when I went in with the Axiom Pearl going 15 to 9, I still had a good look. But if you notice, the ball doesn't quite start up as early. Even though the Axiom Pearl is a stronger overall ball than the Hustle PBR, I account more of that for the fact that I'm in the heavier part of the oil for a longer period of time. Once I got the third one in, you notice it 4-pinned. But then the fourth one, I didn't think was terrible, but it kind of hung out there for a 210. While the ball reaction isn't bad, the overall theme is it's easier for the ball to lean toward the half pocket side and even light than it is going flush. Now when I went in deeper with the Idea, the first shot did the same thing as shot 4 with the Axiom Pearl, where I 210'd. Since I didn't feel like I threw it terrible, I just tried to soften the ball speed a little bit to give the ball a little bit more time to turn the corner. As you can see, being in the heaviest part of the pattern for the longest time, even with a little softer speed, the ball doesn't slow down really easily on this 13 to 1 pattern, but it is making it up the hill from that 9, 10, 11 zone. Now when I got one in on shot 4, the ball came off a little bit stronger for a trip 4. Though I still have room to miss, it's still not as good of a reaction as I had with the Hustle PBR, where pretty much all the misses went flush. The flat 10 on that last shot also confirms that even though the ball is still making it up the hill, it's still getting a little bit too deep into the lane. Now I threw my first shots with the 44-foot drop brush in each of the 3 zones in the same place that I threw with the 35-foot drop brush distance in the original pattern, so that way I could get a good read on the additional oil in the last 9 feet. As you can see with my first shot with the Hustle PBR, the ball went longer, but still came in light. After staying in the same spot for the second shot and still coming in light, I moved one right with my feet and just tried to keep it on line. Shot 3 hit the pocket a little more flush, and shot 4 I got in, and it still went flush. Now with shot 5 going in light, it's already showing me with more of the misses going light how the drop brush is affecting the ball motion, even though I'm already pretty close to the dry. First shot with the Axiom Pearl going 15 to 8, you can see how I almost left the 210. So I made a 2-1 to the right, got the ball dead left, and it went flush. The JJ signature house pattern 2-2 adjustment. 2 right with the feet, yank it 2 over the left toe. Now, since that wasn't the highest quality shot, I wanted to throw another with my feet and target in the same zone. And I leaped it a little right and 2-4-10. Knowing that, I inched a little bit more to the right to get it closer to the friction, and I even light 8-10 on top of that. So I decided to line up in the same spot I stood with the Hustle PBR in the first video, which was 6 and 5 right of where I was, and it flat 10'd. 6 and 5 right, and the balls are still hitting light to half pocket at best. They're definitely tighter. Now the first shot with the idea from 20 to 10 was a beeline straight to the 3-6. Shot 2, even though it was a little firmer than before, I moved 7 and 4 right, and the ball still 2-pinned. After that second shot, and remembering how tight they were with the Axiom Pearl, I went 10 and 6 right to where I originally started with a drop rush at 35 feet, got it to the friction quicker, and in that first shot in that zone hooked. But then I started a little outside of that zone for shot 4, and it 2-10'd again. Shot 5, I got it going more direct in that zone, and it struck. What was pretty amazing to me is how the difference between the 3 balls was around 6 to 10 boards with a drop rush at 35 feet, but now with a drop rush at 44 feet, the middle of the lane got so tight that it literally brought all the balls closer together. What ball and line would I start with on each lane? On the 35-foot drop rush, I'd start in zone 1 with the Hustle PBR going from like 11 to 8, because when the shots you get on line, you miss left and right, and they all go dead flush, it's pretty hard to not go with that. On the 44-foot drop brush, I would probably still start with the PBR, because it became obvious that the middle of the lane, especially inside of 10, got really tight. I even threw more shots from inside after we were done filming, and the ball still wanted to go really straight in that part of the lane. So if I didn't get them going to the friction really quick, they wouldn't pick up a roll until it was too late. Do I think the Axiom Pearl and the Idea could strike? I do, but I think both of them would require more surface. The Idea was a little bit more polished out of the box, and the Axiom had 2000 on it, but it gradually worked its way to a lane-shined finish. I think both of those balls could use a fresh 2 or 3000 pad on them, and I feel like they'd work much better. But as they were, I'd have to stay with the Hustle PBR. The main thing to take out of this video is depending on how far the brush drops from the end of the oil pattern can make a pretty big difference in ball reaction, especially in pattern design like this, where there's a lot more oil being applied going forward and the bulk of it is piled between 10 to 10. As shown earlier, we doubled the amount of conditioner in the last 9 feet of the pattern by dropping it at 44 feet as opposed to dropping it at the original 35. When this is a little bit more of an extreme example, it also shows how much the placement on the reverse pass of the existing oil left in the brush going forward can drastically change ball motion without adding an additional drop of total oil volume. So if you try running a pattern that utilizes the drop brush function into a lane machine that does not have those software capabilities, don't be surprised if it plays a little tighter than what you'll see at the tournament site. Hope you enjoyed this edition of JJ's Pattern Reviews, and stay tuned for more pattern reviews in the near future.